Hello everyone, this is Delster and welcome to another music topics video. And in today's topic, we will focus on the Milli Vanilli documentary streaming on Paramount Plus. I don't know much about Milli Vanilli, but they got a lot of attention for lip syncing their performances. They also were popular in the late 80s going into the early 90s, as they were a German R&B group consisting of Fab Morvan and Rob Pilatus. The duo eventually had their Grammys revoked after the truth of them not singing their songs came out. Just to let you guys know, this video will have spoilers, so don't say I didn't warn you. In the beginning, they show us a small recap of Milli Vanilli and what led to this big scandal before we learn about their humble beginnings. From the recap, it seemed like they dealt with a lot of hate and being called frauds in the newspapers. We first learn about Fab Morvan, who grew up in Paris and ran away from home. Fab went to live in Germany but was homeless at 18. In Germany, he would later meet Rob Pilatus. Rob was 2 years older than Fab, and when they met, Rob was a breakdancer. Rob and Fab had a lot in common, but the one thing that connected them was the fact that they came from broken families. Both were dark-skinned and living in Germany, for it was rare to see people with dark skin, so the people around them weren't not nice to Fab and Rob. Especially Rob when he was a child. Rob was adopted, but his biological father was a black American soldier and his mom was a stripper, as said in the documentary. While in the children's home, Rob would drink from the toilet in order to get people to adopt him, which he eventually did at the age of 4. His adopted mom was Carmen and was physically abusive towards him. Carmen could not figure out why the kids made fun of Rob's skin, as she didn't see it as a problem. Fab also came from an abusive environment, but eventually ran away. When he met Rob, they found comfort in music by a stereo at their home that they were living at the time. In the beginning, Rob and Fab performed at clubs and wanted to be the biggest pop stars in the world. They managed to be backup dancers for music videos and formed their own group called Empire Bazaar. They later met producer at the time, Frank Farron, who produced Boney M. For those of you who don't know who any Boney M songs, you probably heard one of his songs in TikTok that goes, "He was big and strong, but na 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 na." This song is called Rah Rah Rasputin. The deep male voice was actually Frank himself, not Boney M, as he was only a dancer. I'll come back to Frank singing in a few. Frank had an assistant named Ingrid, who at the time was his girlfriend, and they gave Fab and Rob a contract, which they immediately signed without reading it, since they must have been too excited to start their music journey. As they signed the contract, Frank told them to not mess with him, which sadly Rob and Fab would later find out why. Fab and Rob waited for a couple months until Frank finally called them and showed them a song at Frank's studio. After they finished, Rob talks to Frank first, while Fab can hear Rob yelling from another room. When Rob comes back, he tells Fab that Frank wants them to lip sync the song that they just heard. Ingrid said that when Rob was 24 and Fab was 21 at the time, they signed the contract and had to do what the contract stated, or they would have to pay up. They had to lip sync, but should have read the contract first before signing it though. As Ingrid was coming in to be interviewed, she didn't seem to take it so seriously, as she was trying to be funny for the documentary. The name Millie came from Ingrid's nickname or middle name. Not sure which one though. Ingrid at the time was the controller for Frank's company as well. In the song that Rob and Fab were listening to, they heard the voices of Frank Howell, an American singer, and Charles Shaw, a rapper from Houston, Texas. The female vocals were from a backup singer named Jody. Ingrid didn't have faith in Rob and Fab because their accents were too strong at the time. She said that Fab and Rob were okay with lip syncing from the start since they wanted to be big stars. One of the singers for Milli Vanilli named Charles exposes that Boney M was not a real singer, but a dancer. It was Frank had sung for Boney M, as he did the same thing as to what he was going to do to Milli Vanilli. Charles said that Frank was a producer that made money off of black artists. Milli Vanilli hit the charts for the first time with Girl You Know It's True and eventually landed in the US charts at number 2. Fab and Rob eventually embraced the lie as they got more popular. However, Fab was scared that people were going to find out somehow. Unfortunately, that ended up being true, as one of Charles's managers told someone in Munich, Germany, about Milli Vanilli lip syncing. Charles went to Frank's studio only to be told that he was fired from singing for Milli Vanilli. Frank was also very strict on how the singers would enter or leave the studio. He would have Milli Vanilli or the other singers get out through a back door or the basement so that no one would find out about Rob and Fab not actually singing for Milli Vanilli. Milli Vanilli were then signed to Arista Records, who was run by Clive Davis at the time. Their first album was All or Nothing, but if you look at the credits, Fab and Rob's names aren't on there, especially when the documentary shows you an example at a record store. When the interviewers told the Arista people that Fab and Rob aren't credited on their first album, the Arista people were like, oh well. Their next hit single was Blame It on the Rain, which landed Milli Vanilli straight to number 1 on the chart. Frank, however, did not want Rob and Fab to go to America as he feared that Milli Vanilli would get exposed over there. However, Milli Vanilli eventually went to tour in America soon after the album went to number 1 in the US charts. Their shows in the US were packed as fans admired Rob and Fab. In one of their US shows, one of Milli Vanilli's songs was scratched as part of the song was repeating some of the words. This left Rob mad as he walked out and lost his cool backstage. He told the host what he could do as Rob was frustrated with the situation. One radio show noticed that Milli Vanilli talked differently than how they sing on their record. Rob and Fab's English wasn't fluent at the time once they went to the US and people started realizing it, especially Arsenio Hall, who would crack jokes of Milli Vanilli lip-syncing their songs. Fab feared that he and Rob were going to get caught as it felt as though there was a load on their shoulders because of this lie. It was hard for Rob because he was starting to feel loved by the fans compared to how it was in his childhood. Ingrid thought Fab and Rob were repressing the lie. Milli Vanilli drank and did more drugs to numb the pain and guilt of carrying the lie. Rob would have blackouts as he drank a lot. Ingrid thinks that Rob has some kind of inattention syndrome as he used to drink water from the toilet as a child so that people could adopt him at the shelter where he was at. She also said that Rob wanted a mother, so he gave Ingrid hugs, cuddled with her in bed, non-sexually, and trusted Ingrid like a mom. Milli Vanilli eventually went platinum, which left Charles very angry as he took drugs and drank, because his voice was the reason why they were on top. He goes on TV and exposes the truth. Milli Vanilli fans threatened Charles Shaw afterwards. When Milli Vanilli got nominated for the Grammys and wanted Milli Vanilli to perform as well, it was the beginning of the end for them. Frank's team paid the Grammys a lot of money for Milli Vanilli to lip sync, and they got approved to do so. Michael Green, who worked for the Grammys at the time, told the boys to make it work. After Milli Vanilli's performance, the look on Ozzy Osbourne's face was like, really, guys? De La Soul, a hip-hop group, had the same look as Ozzy, and it felt like some of the audience, mostly musicians, knew Milli Vanilli were not actually singing their songs live. That same night, Milli Vanilli won a Grammy, leaving everyone shocked for the wrong reasons. Ingrid said that she felt like the truth was going to come out sooner since Milli Vanilli won that Grammy. At the Grammys after party, Milli Vanilli were high and wasted. One guy who was being interviewed for the documentary said that Milli Vanilli were anxious and arrogant at the party. Rob even refused to meet with Paul McCartney of the Beatles because Paul wanted to meet with the group. While intoxicated, Rob believed in their lie by saying that their songs are their actual voices. Milli Vanilli even said they were better than the Beatles. Rob and Fab would later want to use their own singing voices for their music, but in their contract, they could not as they were signed for multiple albums, which meant using the singers for their voices. Fab recently found that out after winning the Grammys. Fab and Rob played cat and mouse with Frank so that they could break him and be free of the contract. Frank did not allow that to happen as he went on a press conference and confirmed that Milli Vanilli were in fact lip syncing. TV stations and the news went crazy over this. Sadly for Milli Vanilli, they had to give back their Grammys. Rob and Fab tried to defend themselves as they wanted to live their dreams and that they were seduced by Frank because Fab and Rob were poor. One person asked, "What kind of message is that?" Rob said, "You get something, but for that, you make a pact with the devil." One interviewer asked how they would know that Milli Vanilli aren't lying to them right now, and another interview leaves as they were ashamed of Milli Vanilli. The interviewers from the old clip in the documentary seemed to be very angry at Milli Vanilli and asked tons of concerned questions. Charles said in the documentary that Milli Vanilli were shark bait for the interviewers. Milli Vanilli got sued and were heavily ridiculed everywhere, especially on the Howard Stern show. Frank was pretty much off the hook while Rob and Fab were getting dragged down, especially Rob's family who were threatened in Germany. One person who was interviewed for this documentary felt that Frank lied to the black artists and that they were beneath him. Milli Vanilli were culprits of the lie that was started by Frank. After the mess, Frank then released the real Milli Vanilli, a totally different group, same thing as the other artists he's worked with. Fab and Rob soon released their own album with their own vocals and only sold 2,000 albums. I did hear that the record company that they were in was about to go bankrupt, which is why they couldn't sell more albums. Rob took it the hardest and he felt like a part of him died when the lie was exposed. Rob and Fab eventually drifted apart because of the drugs. Rob's mother said that Rob was dangerous while he was on drugs. Fab went solo and sang in the RuPaul show, not the drag show in case you're wondering. While on the show, Fab was asked if he and Rob were still talking, and Fab answered that they had gone their separate ways. One night, Fab was outside. He saw a man stumbling on the ground. It turned out to be Rob as he looked out of it, so Fab took Rob home. Fab said that the place Rob was living in looked like a crack house. One of the people living there said that Rob wanders off due to the fact that Rob took harder drugs as he was lost in reality. All the drugs caused Rob to get beaten up on the streets and he would eventually get arrested. He went to rehab 11 times in 7 years. Rob thought that he could come back from the drugs though. One day, Rob checked into a hotel that was next to Ingrid. Ingrid checked on Rob and saw that he was on the floor with shorts on. The janitor said that Rob had already died, leaving Ingrid sad as she could not save him. Fab received the call that Rob had died of pills and alcohol consumption. Rob's mom said that Frank did not attend the funeral, but he did send wreaths. His and Ingrid's wreaths were put on Rob's grave, or tombstone, whatever it was, as Rob's mom and her daughter's wreaths were removed in order for the media to take pictures of Frank's wreaths instead. Fab was very sad after his friend Rob had died, so he went to Hollis or Amsterdam to take a break and met Tessa. Tessa did not know that Fab was from Milli Vanilli since he introduced himself as Fabrice. He and Tessa now have a big family of 4 kids but are not married. People nowadays look at Milli Vanilli and see them as an allusion to pop music. Their legacy is considered a punchline. After the truth came out, Fab felt embarrassed to be seen in public. He thought people were laughing at him, but he eventually embraced the past and was proud to be in Milli Vanilli after all those years. He later felt that he did not have to be ashamed of anything. Fab says that you could reinvent yourself by falling and picking yourself up, and that is legacy. We then see him sing Blame It on the Rain in a calming, happy voice live. Fab feels as though he is honoring Rob's name by performing on stage. He definitely looks happier than before and looks good for someone that is in their 50s. Frank unfortunately declined to be interviewed for this documentary. As of today, Fab has a wife that filed for divorce this year, and it's not Tessa. I'm not sure what that is about, but his soon-to-be ex-wife named Kim Marlowe is also executive for this documentary. From the looks of it, Fab and Kim don't seem to be on bad terms as they seem to have a working relationship, but for him to be with someone else, I think he should have divorced earlier. Maybe it was too expensive because sometimes divorces are a little expensive, I heard. He definitely seems more happy So as long as there's no bad blood between the two parties, then I guess it's okay. I just don't like open relationships in my opinion, especially when there's kids involved. Fab was doing vocals for the Christmas movie Spirited in a trailer where he sang for Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds' voices recently. He also does DJ work, and a movie based on his and Rob's time in Milli Vanilli called Girl You Know It's True will be released in theaters 2024 of this year. I wish him and his family the best of luck, though he seems happier and at peace. As for Frank, the disgraced man, he sadly still works in the music community. He has a musical called Daddy Cool, which has songs from Bonnie M, Milli Vanilli, and all the other artists that he has worked with. Interesting fact, he produced and mixed Meatloaf's fifth album, Blind Before I Stop. He also sang backup for that album. Not much of Frank over the years, except when he did a cover with his daughter in 2021. As for Ingrid, she still has a strong connection with Frank, and was involved with the Girl You Know It's True movie. She was in a relationship, but it has since ended. This documentary was really good, as I gave it a 10 out of 10 and learned a lot about Milli Vanilli. It's sad, but has a happy ending for one of the members. I honestly think that Frank should be held accountable for fraud and letting Rob and Frank take the heat and blame from the press and everyone else. He was a con man and a jerk, but of course blamed it on the singers who were punching bags. Even if Frank wanted to be interviewed, I think he still would be the villain of this documentary. I could understand how Rob and Fab did not read the contract as they should have, but they really wanted to live their dreams. Any up-and-coming musician would probably be happy to have a record deal, but nowadays it's very tricky as there are some strings attached. I watched a show called Victoria, and one of the characters named Santiago was trying to be a famous musician. His father's ex-girlfriend knew a music producer and invited the producer for Santiago's shows. He signed the contract, but years later, Santiago had changed his style from rock to pop music and was letting his producer take over his life, even his long-term relationship with his girlfriend. Once he realized his mistake, Santiago stood up for his girlfriend and told the producer that he quit, but like Milli Vanilli, he had issues because of the contract. Santiago had to take his manager or producer to court in order to be free of the contract, so he asked his father for help. But the show had already ended, so I don't know if he would have won the case or not. But they showed a glimpse of him performing his old music in some show with his girlfriend. Being in the music industry and making it is a lot more difficult because of these contracts. Nowadays, a lot of up-and-coming musicians do their own thing and produce and release their own music through social media. Some musicians that I have met, even though some of them aren't the nicest people, released their music through a website called DistroKid. There was also this music studio that said in a post that musicians don't make a lot of money on Spotify. If you stream an artist's song on Spotify, I think they get less than $1 per stream. Being a musician, you pretty much do a lot of work other than singing and writing, as you have to market and promote yourself. The music industry has always been a place full of making money off of artists behind the scenes. Lots of musicians had their issues with their record labels, such as 30 Seconds to Mars, who sued their label EMI and made a documentary about it. Then there's Motley Crue, who had to buy their own music, while the Beatles don't even own their own music. It's a very toxic place that has negatively impacted singers such as Kesha and Britney Spears, for example. This documentary, however, is a great example for people that want to have a career in music, as it shows the dark side of the music industry and having to read those contracts. While being in a record label is a big win, I think producing and making your own music is a lot less complicated than being taken down by these contracts. While it does seem like a lot of work, and I get that it's unbearable, I think it's better than to sell your soul for big record companies who could destroy you like it destroyed Milli Vanilli. I blame Frank for Rob's death, as Rob just wanted to be loved by someone, and as soon as he was getting it from his fans, but then they turned their backs on him and Fab because of the lie, I think that's what destroyed him and caused him to die so soon. I also didn't like Ingrid as well. I thought she came out as a phony, kind of careless person, but her reaction to Rob's death was like, maybe she does care. I don't know. Also, the reason why Frank never really had a career as a singer is because he didn't have the image, which at the time, in order to be a singer, you had to be skinny, and Frank wasn't skinny. But his lies did cost a life. In the end, at least Rob is hopefully in a better resting place. I would definitely watch this documentary if you are a fan of Milli Vanilli, or if you just want to know who they are in general. Overall, it was a great watch, and it is streamed on Paramount Plus with a subscription. Also, if you guys want me to do a movie review of the up-and-coming Girl You Know It's True, let me know in the comment section below. I haven't seen the trailer or don't know when it will be showing in theaters, so I'll let you guys know. But anyway, this is Dalster, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video, as it's a bit different than the usual. Anyway, I'll see you guys next time. Comment, like, subscribe for more content. Take care of your mental health and everyone around you, and I'll do the same. Bye, guys.